Psychologists, therapists of Reddit, what are some bad pieces of mental health advice you've seen on social media? You are wasting 1/3 RD of your life sleeping, not just bulls but a recipe for madness and death. Pretty sure I'm wasting 2/3 RDs of my life by staying awake. I saw someone tell another individual with schizophrenia that they didn't need medication. What they really needed is the motivation to cope with their mental illness symptoms. Motivation, yes. In my day, kids didn't have these so-called mental health issues. Get over it. That's because in the good old days, affected persons fell through the cracks and committed suicide, became homeless and vanished, or were locked up away from society until they died. So what you're seeing is survivorship bias. I had somebody in the narcissistic parents group privately message me after I posted about entering therapy because of my childhood, telling me the easiest way to deal with it was to forget about it and move on with my life. Easiest way to deal with it was to forget about it and move on with my life. If life was this easy, therapy wouldn't be a thing. What a crappy thing to say to someone. I have bipolar and some people that know ask if I've considered going for a no medication approach. Yeah, I tried. In that time I had more suicide attempts than I can count and I was extremely volatile and unstable. Medication has given me an actual opportunity to live and function like an adult. Do you know what it's like to not be suicidal or manic? It's really nice. I won't give this up for anything. You think I haven't also tried pulling up my bootstraps, eating well, exercising, sitting in the sun, etc. Meds get me to a place where I can actually exercise, eat well, etc etc. It is all important and works together, but first your brain has to function enough to do all the rest. As both a psych nurse and a counselor, I see so many terrible things. Most of the advice you see online from non-scientific sources is mostly harmless pop psychology stuff, and some can actually be helpful. For example, don't use your phone in bed to help you sleep better at night, or daily meditation for mindfulness, etc. But there are things I see online all the time that are just such bulls I'm not even sure how they are legally allowed to stay up. Such as, almost anything to do with essential oils. Some essential oils in small amounts can be useful for mild aromatherapy in some conditions, can help with seasonal affective disorder, or as additives and medicinal mixes. But otherwise there's basically no evidence that essential oils do anything other than cost a lot of money and destroy the environment. Some can be legit dangerous to your health. People who claim there is any kind of trick that will snap you out of depression or addiction, or motivational speakers who claim that you just need to think positive. If some people find that helpful, that's great, but there is basically no evidence that self-help stuff is better than placebo when it comes to depression or other conditions. Anyone who tells you that you just need to get over it is full of crap and doesn't actually understand what it means to process something difficult. But the big one for me is when people claim that emotions are somehow illogical, and that acting like an emotionless logic machine is the best way to be. Emotions are generally perfectly reasonable responses to thoughts and events, at least within the context of a person's own subjective experience. Telling people that they shouldn't be so emotional or shouldn't let their emotions get to them is not only practically useless, it's also completely invalidating a person's experience. Sure, it's good to learn to process emotion and control behavior, but that's not the same as saying emotions are bad. This was longer than I intended it to be. Sorry everybody. That last one. My ex used to tell me that anxiety was fake and that I was just being a whiny baby. I would have full blown unable to breathe, paralyzing, blackout anxiety attacks, and he would just say something along the lines of, "You need to stop freaking out all the time." He was the main reason for my anxiety. Typically they show pictures of sun breaking through trees and saying you don't need meds or nature is medicine or this is a real antidepressant, etc. Except some people do. Maybe they need both. Some people can find healing without medications, some cannot, and that's okay. Not a therapist psychologist, but I'm bipolar 2 with ADHD and I get advertisements for natural cures for BPD and ADHD. Diet, exercise, and supplements help but don't cure. I need antipsychotic medications to keep me from having visual and auditory hallucinations. A special salad isn't gonna keep those at bay. The self-care approach of, oh, you deserve to take a nap when you have multiple things to do or buy that thing to make you happy is crappy in my opinion as well. Self-care is actually cleaning your disgusting depression den and doing the crap on your to-do list that you've been putting off for weeks. When I'm hypermanic I spend excessive amounts of money on stupid crap I don't need, so treat yourself is horrible advice. This is super specific to me, but I'm sure others have this mentality as well. Amen. I can't help but think about the psychiatrist I was seeing when my mood stabilizer began to not work the right way. After 2 appointments the incredible advice I got was for your condition, sleep is very important. Like what the frick be? I'm telling you I'm having fast switching and ideation and the advice is, oh, sleep harder lol. Change psychiatrist. Everything happens for a reason. Don't let it get to you. Absolutely not the right advice to give someone and actually can make things a lot worse. I appreciate the sentiment, but it can come across as very hurtful and maybe even vindictive when said in certain scenarios. On the flip, one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was from my therapist. This was in the pits of depression after someone had sexually assaulted me. She said that essentially I was holding on to a debt that would never be repaid and that in the end, the debt would only hurt me and not the person who owes me. It is best to write it off as bad debt and move on. Actually saved my life, that one piece of advice. Obligatory, not a therapist, but a doctor. People telling others you can just choose to not be depressed, or that you need to self-care yourself back to a normal psychological state. Yes, healthy food, exercise, and enough sleep is definitely important, but too many people discredit the disease status of depression and claim it's just a feeling. No, sadness is a feeling. True depression needs therapy and possibly medication. Amateur analysis of mental health issue through comments or posts. You aren't qualified to diagnose someone. Don't do it. Even if you are, you should leave it to a professional environment where your words can actually have some positive impact rather than be slapping someone with your bachelor's degree for upvotes. About 90% of the time on Reddit if an argument is going south for someone they'll always take out the "you need therapy" card. There could be a little sentence with someone expressing their anger at one particular moment that somehow reveals a lifelong cry for therapy. I'm not a psychologist, but when I had my depression my roommate told me to just pull myself together. We don't live together anymore. Med student and hopeful psychiatrist. Worst I've seen isn't the message, it's the context. Instagram models with their extravagant lifestyles quoting "love yourself," maybe not understanding that a lot of the time they set the unrealistic bar that people attempt to reach in their real lives. Don't just shout buzzwords. Ground yourselves. Open up about your stories and how you overcame them with sincerity, even if it's at a detriment to your clout. Let people see through the looking glass, just for a second. I always see people post depressed quotes and things like 2020 made me realize who was there for and who wasn't. No, everyone's going through this pandemic bull's headache together. It seems as though everyone's struggling. Whether it's financially, mentally, or physically, health. We're all going through something and we shouldn't be acting selfishly expecting others to put their lives on hold to cater to ours. So much material is out there about recognizing toxic people, assuming we are all victims who are attracted to the wrong type of people. In therapy, you may actually learn how you have behaved in maladaptive ways that have contributed to strained or prematurely cut off friendships. Such a hard thing to recognize in healthy and even harder when you have a mental health condition. Massive amounts of respect to you and I hope you are doing great now. Iron app. Most advice I see online is horrendous. The first step towards a cure is admitting you are sick. Instead, most people encourage people with issues thinking their good intentions will cure the other person. In the long run, they have hurt them immensely. Does a social worker count? If yes, the people who tell that bad things that happen to you, aka mental illness, is a way for God to test you. Absolutely infuriating. My so's brother committed suicide almost 7 years ago. While their family was grieving, they were visited by a local pastor even though they were not religious. The pastor at one point said God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. To which my so replied he certainly gave my brother something he couldn't handle. No response from the God Squad on that one. 2 things that are well-meaning, but I've seen them backfire. 1. Taking time off of school and or work to work on yourself. Look, I get the premise and I'm definitely not saying it's always bad, but I've seen it go south more often than I've seen it work. Schoolwork, whatever, provide opportunities to experience success and forward progress. Yes, they can be very stressful at times and there are certainly situations where they may be toxic. If that's the case, I begrudgingly understand walking away, but just quitting without a plan often creates stagnancy in life that is just terrible for mental health. I acknowledge that this is very much case by case, but if you're going to take time away from schoolwork, come up with a plan first. Have something you want to accomplish. If you don't have something to work on, now you're struggling with mental issues and bored. If it's work that you've left, it also leads to 2. Money. The idea that money can't buy happiness is generally fine. The idea that worrying about money is shallow or that money doesn't matter is freaking stupid. I work almost exclusively with low-income clients and I've had plenty who feel like they're being vain because they're stressed about money. I'm very straightforward in telling them that the people who claim money isn't important are either rich or delusional. Low income correlates with higher rates of depression, chronic stress, poorer health, less access to healthcare services, and just about everything else you don't want. Money matters and telling people that they shouldn't worry about it is incomprehensibly misguided. I understand the money thing completely. I'm on benefits and have been on the bare minimum for years and I've always been told I should be grateful I get anything. I'm pretty everyone who tells you to be grateful have never had to live on £40 a week. I've just had my first increased benefits and for the first in my adult life I don't have to ration groceries. Clinical psychology doctorate student and mental health support worker here. Anything to do with getting a full 8 hours, eating healthily and exercise for depression. Yes, those things can have a very positive impact on low moods, but clinical depression usually stems from something and that problem needs to be addressed before these lifestyle tips can truly serve their purpose. I'm not a therapist but I have to chime in here. Subreddits like relationship advice etc have people that will do the absolute opposite of what they should be doing. People go to those places for advice on their love life and their worries and the majority of replies they get are sarcastic and hate-filled emotional punches. Can no one give actual advice within giving the whole I've been giving advice here for years so I know more than you vibe. Not yet a therapist, though I'm currently in the process of applying to a clinical psychology program. Nearly a decade ago, as I was struggling with significant depression and suicidal ideation and was, myself, in therapy and on antidepressants. An individual who did not know this about me, as I was extremely private about this stuff, once went off about how depression is basically a label for a made-up disorder and that if someone's feeling bad, they just need to do a good deed to feel better. I didn't say anything at the time, but I wanted to sock him in the face as hard as I could. I regret to this day that I didn't call him out on his crap, but at the time, I was ashamed to be struggling with depression, needing therapy and medication, and I froze up. It's weird how we are ashamed of mental illnesses but we have no problem telling people we broke our leg. When I wasn't doing well I felt the same way. Now that I'm doing better I openly talk about it so I do my small part in getting it more normalized. Not a psychologist but as someone with ADHD, whenever someone tells me to concentrate, my brain shuts off whenever I try to force myself to concentrate and I have none of that sweet dopamine rush at the end that you get. It's more difficult than that. Stop recommending it every time I have something I have to do. As someone not with ADHD I have to say telling someone to concentrate is useless. Concentrating is hard work. I've never been very good at it. And no dopamine rush. Sufferer 1. I'm unemployed, can't get a job, and I'm suffering from depression. Acquaintance 1. You are not your job. There's more to life than jobs. Sufferer 2. I'm lonely, can't find dates, sex, relationships, etc. Acquaintance 2. You need to love yourself first. There's more to life than sex. Sufferer 3. I can't stay motivated or finish anything. Always getting lost in distraction. Acquaintance 3. You don't care enough and you need to take action. 1. Dyslexia isn't real. They just need to try harder. Or dyslexia is only reading based. Dyslexia might be shorthand for the whole DIS family of learning disorders, but I assure you they are all real. 2. Depression is cured by sunlight. Yes, going outside can help moderate some symptoms, but it's not a cure. 3. Girls don't have ADHD. Girls don't have autism. Girls are socialized differently, which causes some symptoms to be masked. 4. Teenagers can't get anxiety. Have you seen what's happening inside their brains? I'm amazed they aren't crawling on the ceiling. 5. All those stupid self-care posts that just promote avoidance of the task issue. Taking a walk might give you some space and a chance to recharge, but that essay still needs to be written. That exam sat. Delaying this will only compound the issue. 6. They just need to toughen up. Grumble grumble. Back in my day. Back in your day there was lead in petrol and paint in children's bedrooms. We will just go and tell people's brains to make the right chemicals through sheer willpower. 7. My child is on the spectrum and that makes them special. Yes, however, as anxiety is often found in teens with autism, let's treat that so they don't have to suffer needlessly. Are you preparing your child to live independently? See this for children with intellectual or behavioral issues. Do you want your child to be able to live independently or semi-independently or not? What is our end goal, Karen? The dyslexia one really annoys me, especially when they dismiss it and go just read more. Use marijuana to cope with anxiety and depression. Marijuana is a depressant and causes more anxiety after prolonged use. It also can lead to psychotic features and mental disorders. Marijuana has a lot of good uses such as pain management and increasing appetite. It is not an effective treatment method for mental health issues. You just gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps, kid. Thanks, now I can be serotonin deficient and perform a useless task. The focus on eating disorders is around anorexia. People associate AIDS with anorexia because that's what the media write about. Take to the bone, for example. But most people with AIDS are at a normal weight and suffer from bulimia, binge eating disorder, and other varieties. When people think depressed and sad mean the same thing. I have depression and can feel happy. I still have depression. Same with anxiety. Anxiety and nervous don't mean the same thing. I have anxiety and can feel calm and safe. I still have anxiety. Depression and anxiety are chemical imbalances in the brain due to atypical development and or trauma. It isn't a passing thing or an act for attention or a moral failing. It's not a girls only thing. It's not purely emotional. Having this off balance of thoughts and feelings all the time leads to exhaustion and pain and makes socializing and keeping a job very hard. It affects everything. Medicine helps. Medicine saves lives and improves them. Just because some ableist denies the existence of mental illness, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Imagine if someone went to a person in a wheelchair and told them to quit being a baby and just walk. Don't you think they would if they could? And don't you think saying that is cruel? It's like a wealthy person telling a homeless person to just buy a house to live in to solve their homelessness. If they had the ability to do that, wouldn't they already be under a roof? Clinical social worker here. There are so many god-awful things that my clients come to me saying that they've internalized. I hate so much that they spend time and money in therapy just to unlearn terrible things they've been forced to accept before we can even scratch the surface of trauma mental illness. But off the top of my head. 1. Calling things that anger you about a person toxic or calling someone abusive because they upset you. Words have power. Please don't belittle survivors. 2. Calling things that anger, upset, inconvenience you traumatic, nuanced. I'm aware. Trauma thresholds are very real psychological differences in people, and what's traumatic for some isn't for others. Sure, but again, words have power. Please don't belittle survivors. 3. The use of OCD, depressed and anxious as adjectives. You're straightening the pens is basic organization, not obsessive compulsive disorder. Feeling sad or disappointed or even melancholic is often not depression, although it may be another valid psychological concern. Being nervous and being anxious are clinically distinct words for two very different sensations and experiences. Also, the wildly inappropriate propensity for Redditors to call things autistic is wild. 4. Yoga, positive thinking, juice cleanses, meditation, exercise, etc. Please, medicate yourself if you feel it could help you. Frick those neurotypicals and hightail your butt to therapy. 5. Please don't use weed or CBD without talking to your therapist. And for the love of God, don't think we don't know when substances, any substances, are being used in place of or in conjunction with your meds. We do. And we only want to help you. Most of us are Team ACAB and don't want to snitch on you, or legally can't unless you meet certain parameters. Double bonus. We sincerely only care about what could harm you. Phew. Super long and I could keep going, but yeah. Take online mental health advice with a mountain of salt if you take it at all. Without context, a lot of the depression and anxiety help you see online is pretty useless. It stems from the massive flood of positive psychology that has been going around for a decade. The last time I saw my gynecologist, she said that when I come back in 6 months she wants me off my anxiety meds. She thinks I can self-heal using yoga. Sounds like she should stay in her lane. I'm not a medical professional, but the advice that pisses me off the most is when I hear other people say get outdoors, get some fresh air, depression can't hit a moving target. Total load of BS for someone dealing with a mental illness. Another comes from a certain segment of society that says pray about it. God hasn't brought you this far to let you down now. In the group help addiction realm, the lone that does the most damage is people in recovery don't need meds. The 12 steps is all you need. Seriously, if you are dealing with a mental illness, be it depression, bipolar, anorexia, or the plethora of other issues that people deal with, seek medical help. Don't listen to stupid people that don't hold a medical doctorate but want to throw around poor advice. It wasn't on social media, but I did watch a teacher of mine, who claimed to be a licensed therapist, tell a friend of mine that he was depressed because he listened to rap music and smokes weed. Oh, and according to this jackass, Asperger's isn't a thing and I'm not really autistic. Not a psychologist, but I do help run a suicide support advice blog. A lot of people have said that they've been told diet, exercise, and yoga, also that it's all in your head. Lately there's been an increase in social media posts telling people that self-care involves cancelling plans, eating junk food, not leaving the couch all day, and buying whatever you want. These are things that you shouldn't feel guilty about doing in moderation, but when done often can definitely worsen depression and anxiety. Self-care is all about finding a balance between loving yourself and treating yourself well and pushing yourself to be your best. That means things like eating healthy, exercising regularly, socializing with loved ones, and generally pushing yourself out of your comfort zone often are just as important as treating yourself and having quiet, restful days. I've seen some people post that mental issues are just excuses for your mistakes. That's in itself it's a problem because it doesn't allow self-reflection and understanding the condition you're in. Most of the be tough stuff can work on certain people that just need that last push, but on the other 99.9% of people can lead to dangerous results if taken too seriously, as we've seen in the past week with the elections. You have as many hours in the day as Beyonce, except that you don't. Beyonce has someone to cook, to clean, to organize her schedule, to watch her kids, etc. You have to do all that for yourself. Beyonce also has enough sources of income that if she needed to take an extended vacation, she absolutely could. You probably can't. This is supposed to be motivating thought, but it actually produces a lot of shame in people. Why can't I get everything done? I have as many hours in the day as Beyonce. No, honey, you don't. I have anxiety and panic disorder. If I had $1 for every time someone told me to just exercise or it's all in your head, I would have enough money to pay for all my therapy. The exercise one always pisses me off because while I do exercise and it does occasionally help, I can only do specific kinds because hard cardio simulates what panic attacks are like for me. I joined the cross-country team in high school because I was told running would help. I learned very quickly that the feeling of being out of breath triggered my anxiety. Yoga and dance are the best for me, but you shouldn't assume. Most people know what works for them. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.